Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy, and I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Our topic for this stream is ending the spying on us. And of course, this is one of my afternoon streams intended to be a short stream. We will see how it works out. I note that there are 4 people here. They have yet to announce themselves. I'd be pleased to know who you are. But I'm going to get started. Sharing the screen. With the article inspiring the topic, there's a picture of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson listening during an April 9, 2024 press conference on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The headline of this article is, quote, 5-alarm fire as GOP House Speaker tries to ram through the spying bill. It's a spying bill. Spying on who? Spying on us. Spying on Americans. Quote, absent significant amendment, the RISAA, which is the initials for the bill, will do nothing to prevent the government's repeated abuses of Section 702 of the FISA Act to spy on Americans, critics said. This piece was done by Brett Wilkins on April 10th. I'm going to skip over the first part of it, which was an update. Come back to the update later. But with just over a week left for the U.S. Congress to renew a major and highly controversial state surveillance program before it expires, privacy defenders on Tuesday warned that so-called compromise legislation is little more than a ploy. To do what? To permanently reauthorize warrantless government spying on American citizens. Notice, reauthorize. Because, of course, the spying is going on now and has been going on for a long time. The Biden administration and members of Congress from both parties, the duopoly, are seeking to extend Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, which permits warrantless surveillance of non-U.S. citizens, but also captures the communications of Americans. Following a Tuesday markup session by the House Rules Committee and Wednesday consultations with intelligence officials, House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, is expected to call a vote on the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act, otherwise known as RISA, on Thursday. The bill would reauthorize Section 702 for 5 years while enacting what supporters call a series of reforms meant to protect Americans against state surveillance. Quote, absent significant amendment, RISA will do nothing to prevent the government's repeated abuses of Section 702 to spy on Americans, said the Brennan Center for Justice Electronic Privacy Information Center, EPIC, and FreedomWorks in a joint statement. Of course, the Brennan Center for Justice is sort of the chief watchdog on all things civil liberties. Tweet from EPIC, as we noted on earlier thread, RISA, the FISA Section 702 quote, compromise, unquote, bill does not meaningfully reform the authority. Even worse, HPSCI wants to expand Section 702 surveillance in some deeply troubling ways. Introduced in February by Representative Laurel Lee, Republican of Florida, RISA would reauthorize what the Congresswoman called, quote, an indispensable tool that protects us from national security threats within the United States and abroad, unquote. Congress passed a short-term extension of Section 702 last December, with lawmakers unable to agree on whether and how to reform the contentious law that has been abused hundreds of thousands of times, including to spy on protesters, congressional donors, journalists, and others. RISA is meant to be a compromise between Protect the Liberty and End Warrantless Surveillance Act and the FISA Reform and Reauthorization Act. The former bill was supported by privacy defenders, while the ACLU warned that the latter, quote, would greatly expand the government's ability to spy on Americans without a warrant, unquote. Proponents are touting Rise's 56 purported reforms. I almost said perverted reforms. Johnson asserted last week that the legislation, quote, will establish new procedures to rein in the FBI, increase accountability at the FISA court, FISC, impose penalties for wrongdoing, and institute unprecedented transparency across the FISA process, so we no longer have to wait years to uncover potential abuses, unquote. However, civil liberties defenders warn that many of Rise's so-called reforms are little more than window dressing that preserve the status quo. Quote, making 56 ineffective tweaks to a fundamentally broken law is not reforming it, unquote, said the Brennan Center, Epic, and Freedom Works. Spying on Americans without a warrant is precisely what Section 702 allows. In the last year alone, the FBI, this is a tweet from ACLU of Wyoming, in the last year alone, the FBI conducted over 200,000 warrantless, quote, backdoor, unquote, searches of Americans' communications. Congress must not reauthorize Section 702 absent fundamental reforms. Chairman at Representative Mike Turn on reauthorizing FISA Section 02. This is from the House Intelligence Committee. Quote, all Americans who want us to try to make certain that we keep ourselves safe from these outside terrorist groups and organizations. We are not spying on Americans. This is not a warrantless surveillance program, unquote. Yeah, fat chance if you believe that. Got a bridge to sell you. Johnson had previously supported closing the so-called data broker loophole, which the government exploits to purchase sensitive information, and the backdoor search loophole through which domestic law enforcement agencies can access Americans' communications without a warrant. While the House is expected to, that happened 200,000 times, according to this article, in the last year. While the House is expected to vote Thursday on an amendment to close the backdoor search loophole, lawmakers are also likely to vote on 3 FISA expansions and special protections that only apply to members of Congress. Quote, this is so disappointing. When Speaker Johnson was on the Judiciary Committee with me, he was in our coalition fighting for major FISA reforms to protect sensitive data. Now that he's Speaker, he's folding to spy agencies who want to violate your privacy, unquote. Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal, one of the chief folders in Congress herself, wrote on social media on Tuesday. Jayapal lamented that Rice says the, quote, FBI has to notify Congress members to spy on us, but regular Americans can be spied on without a warrant, unquote. Edward Snowden said, tweets, get a warrant, hashtag FISA. Demand Progress Policy Director Sean Vitka said in a statement, quote, in a truly staggering betrayal of public trust, Speaker Johnson is now not only sabotaging votes on overwhelming popular privacy protections for Americans, he's trying to ram through the Intelligence Committee's expansions of FISA, unquote. Quote, this is a 5-alarm fire born from Speaker Johnson's apparent decision to jam his thumb on the scale and sell out everyone in the United States to foreign data brokers, unquote, Vitka added. Furthermore, RISA contains a provision that Elizabeth Gauthier, co-director of the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center, warns, quote, could result in the permanent reauthorization of Section 702, quote, without a single reform, unquote. And Lisa Gauthier tweeted, buried in the Section 702 reauthorization bill that the House will consider this week, RISA is a provision that could result in the permanent reauthorization of this deeply flawed authority without a single reform. Here's how. FISA currently includes a sunset date of April 19th for all of Title VII of FISA. Title VII includes Section 702, but it also includes other provisions, Section 703, 704, and 705, that contain vital protections for Americans located outside the United States. Okay, February 11th. So if FISA sunsets, Section 703, 704, 705, okay, are gone, but there is the possibility the 702 reauthorization. So 702 without the other provisions, even more dangerous. The House must not pass any legislation that could be read to permanently reauthorize Section 702, let alone permanently reauthorize it without a single reform, Gotain said. This provision of RISA must be fixed, or the bill should be dead on arrival. Of course it should be dead on arrival. There should be no surveillance of American citizens. Zero. Absolutely none from the intelligence agencies. That's a severe curtailment of our freedoms. It's been going on now for a very, very long time. It has to stop. The author of this article was Brett Wilkins on April 10th, 2024. The update is as follows. At 3:45 p.m. on April 10th, 19 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday blocked the GOP Speaker's effort to move forward with reauthorizing Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, a controversial spying authority historically abused by government agencies. Quote, the failure of today's votes makes clear that even with the Speaker's finger on the scale, Congress won't reauthorize FISA without meaningful privacy reforms, responded Jake LaPerouse, Deputy Director of the Center for Democracy and Technology Security and Surveillance Project. Quote, the path forward is clear. We need strong reforms to Section 702, including closing the backdoor search loophole and data broker loophole, unquote, he added. Quote, another short-term extension ignores the genuine privacy concerns that have been raised by members of both parties. It's time to bring a bill with genuine reforms to the House floor. So, if you'll forgive me for a minute, I am going to see if there's any latest update on that, because they were supposed to vote on Thursday. Today is Thursday. Maybe a vote is going on right now. Let's see if there is any new news here. Okay, there was no further update, so the new vote must not have been taken yet. The article is practically self-explanatory. Of course, I already made some comments on it. It would be best if FISA were just to expire, and along with it, the surveillance authority that has been abused for so long. Let me look at your questions now. Well, Dee is here. I've got 10 people here and almost no comments. Certainly, a few of you have something to say. Do you want the FISA Act to just expire? And with it, the authority to do warrantless surveillance, which Mike Turner says, no, there's no warrantless surveillance here. Edward Snowden notwithstanding, there's no warrantless surveillance going on here. There's no abuse of the FISA Act. Of course, we all know that there is. And we all know that the right-wingers, those opposing Mike Johnson, and also some of the Democrats who are opposing Mike Johnson, well, there are how many? 227 House members who were opposing Mike Johnson on this. So Mike Johnson has to turn a few votes to pass it. They are all doing us a service at long last in getting rid of this particular bill. It couldn't happen to a nicer bill. Well, it looks like you don't have very much to say about this, so I'm going to tell you that I will be back at 4 o'clock when I'll be discussing the possibility that Biden may drop the prosecution of Julian Assange at long last. So please tune in with me then for that. And as far as this one is concerned, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll see you at 4 o'clock. And if you don't make the 4 o'clock show, I'm on at 8 o'clock for an IR show. That'll be a great one.